You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to welcome you to Talkin Shop. Today, we're going to have a really fun time. We got a whole hour to talk to someone I've been dying to get to all of the cool new news about. You know him from his work with Scout and most recently with Aftershock. And super talented fellow. We're going to come right back after our push and talk to Brian Hawkins. I don't know why I can't share now. You guys know I'm always trying to share to make sure that everyone is knows what we're doing. It's because for some reason my phone is connected to the slow boat Wi-Fi. It's such a bad thing. I say welcome, Ed Weird. I'm so glad that you're with us as usual. I appreciate you so much. If you guys are just joining us, this is Talking Shop on The Experience, and we would really love it if you do a share so that we can have as many people in the room as possible. For Mr. Brian Hawkins is going to be our guest today. And to that end, let's welcome him.
Hey.
So, oh my gosh, your setup is so cool.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Is this an office or a store?
This is an office. Yeah. It's my little office.
All right. So I love to get to know people. You can do that a lot through their collectibles. Like what is your pride and joy? What is the thing in your office you're like, if there was a fire right now and you had to grab something, what would it be?
Oh man, you know,
all of it, right?
Man, I couldn't. This bookshelf over here has like a lot of my graphic novels, so I would try to probably save the bookshelf, but it'd be too heavy for me. So books is something I would definitely try to save. It might hurt some people's feelings, but I would save the books before I save the toys. So this whole bookshelf.
The whole bookshelf.
I'm logging it out.
Are you hulking it out so you have the muscles to be able to just put it on your back?
I've been doing push-ups so consistently, so I think I might be able to handle it, maybe, or at least get some adrenaline going and just He-Man it.
I think I've never asked that question to anyone else that I thought was more like sweating it, like going, "Oh, I can't. This is an impossible question." I don't know if I could fairly answer that either, actually. It's like whatever was close by, I guess.
Yeah.
The answer, kids, is don't grab anything. Get out of the house. Your life is not replaceable.
That's the right answer. Yep. That is the right answer right there.
But still, nightmare material. So do you remember like what your favorite, not your favorite, but your very first like comic book was? Do you still own it?
I wish I did, but I know it was a Spider-Man comic book. Spider-Man was like when I was a kid, I was really big into Spider-Man. I remember the action figure. I wish I could say what number it was. But then I went from Spider-Man to like Wolverine and X-Men. So and I really danced around that for a while, and then eventually Batman. Yeah, I jumped ship a little bit to DC, then I jumped back. So it was definitely a Spider-Man though.
So did you come into Spider-Man like in the 90s runs or a different era?
No, this would have been probably mid 80s, like maybe like 85, 86. In the 90s, I remember having I'm not gonna be able to think of the year, but I had like a bunch of the Superman when he died, and they had the original, like I remember I went to the comic store and I got like 4 of them, and I saved 2 and I opened 2. And I still have those saved. I just don't know where they're at. They're at my mom's house, my mom and dad's house. And I just haven't gone looking because I don't even know where to begin to look for them. But yeah, so it was like 85, 86. And then around I got into the Marvel trading cards. I had a whole stack of those. Yeah. And that was more like early 90s right there.
So explain to everybody that I think we've got a lot of younger viewers also. Not
Hey.
all, but just I know that they exist. What was collecting like back then? For example, when you went to go get the Death of Superman issue, did you just like, watch a show on Whatnot? That didn't exist back then, right? So what did we
Right.
have to do back then?
No, I mean, I knew of collecting, and I would try to like. I knew I was old enough when that Superman book came out to know that I needed to have more than one copy.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, my understanding of collecting probably was not that great. Like I was a reader. Like I consumed. And so then with the trading cards, I began to collect. So I remember I also began to collect like basketball cards maybe a few years later, and I would have like it was like I think it was called Beckett at the time, and you could look at the prices and stuff. So collect there wasn't a collective place like a Whatnot or even these great shows where you could really talk about, or at least that I knew of, that you could talk about like collecting. So it was really just I felt like you were kind of on your own with it, and I didn't know enough to collect enough like I should have. But I do have a few old ones that's just there because you have them and you read them and you keep them.
So
But
did you live close enough to like a local comic shop that you had one, or did you just have to get it from like a lot of people in my generation just had to go like the 7-Eleven, whatever convenience store and get off the rack?
I remember my 7-Eleven at one point did have, and we used to live like right down the block from 7-Eleven. So they used to have like that spinner rack. And I know at one point in time that spinner rack went away. And I remember that my mom and my dad had to drive me and my friends like to the comic book store, which was like cross town. So going there was an adventure. It was a trip. And it usually happened on Saturdays or a Saturday. It probably wouldn't be back to back Saturdays. So like knowing when a comic was coming out wasn't a thing. Like say, well, it's going to come out, this Friday, because I think back in the day they came out on Fridays. Um, it coming out this Friday or that Friday. It was just like you go there and you see what's there.
Right.
I didn't have dates like I have now.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool to hear that your parents supported your love of comic books. Were they just happy that you were into reading? Did they understand it as an art form?
You know what? I want to say that, they were into anything that I was kind of into, and they kind of was really good about nurturing the things that I liked. And they didn't, there was no like, oh, we don't want you to do this. Or it was like, okay, if that's what you're into, you let's go for it. So it was smooth sailing
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I love hearing that. That makes me so happy. And
Cool.
it's cool that you had a friend that also was into it with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So when you were a kid, did you have a superhero that you wanted to be?
It would be Spider-Man. Spider-Man was my jam when I was a kid. It wasn't until '89 Batman that Batman really kind of, well, I can't say that because I like the old Batman cartoon, especially when he showed up in Scooby-Doo. But Batman really jumped on stage for me in '89 with the black suit Batman. I'd never seen that before. It blew my mind. And the Batmobiles. Oh yeah. So it went Spider-Man, and then eventually it was like Batman.
All right. So to that end, who is your favorite Batman?
Oh man, who's my favorite Batman? I have to go with you can never really get this answer right, even though it's not supposed to be a right or
What
wrong
you
thing.
love?
But but you feel like I had to go with my favorite oh man. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I like Christian Bale.
Okay.
I like Christian Bale. Yeah, yeah,
He
it
was
has to be
great.
Christian Bale for me. He's not the height that he's supposed to be for what Bruce Wayne is supposed to be, but I feel like he played the best dark version, tormented version of Batman.
He was really
And
giving him the best storylines, honestly.
yeah, it was some depth there. It was really good. It
Mhm.
was good movie making. It was good movie watching. It was just a fun time, in
I'm
my
gonna
opinion.
say, I'm gonna say hi to everyone that's on. Cool Gamer is on. Joey Galvez
Hey,
is on, shouting out his love for Black Cotton,
Black Cotton.
and then yelling Dick Grayson, Batman all day.
All right, all right.
I was asking primarily because I always wonder if people's like first exposure to a character is always their favorite.
Right.
So for me, Keaton's always my Batman,
Yeah.
just because that was my kind of my first Batman.
He's my
Although
second.
it hasn't been true of other things. Like I used to be Sean Connery all day long for 007, but I don't know, Craig has won me over with his just like really like really drawn out his like
Yeah.
hurt, younger person. So
Yeah.
I love a broken character, and they've made him as broken as you can get. So
I'm a fan of Daniel Craig's James Bond for sure. And he might be my favorite actually. I mean, I'm right there with you.
mhm.
Yeah. Behind him, I would put Roger Moore though.
Roger Moore was so funny. It's when people say that they don't like Roger Moore is because they don't understand that his appearances as James Bond came out at a time when everything was a little bit on the hokey tip. That's what everyone wanted. Batman was a little bit hokey.
Yeah.
He was a little bit hokey. You
Yeah.
couldn't have it be too serious. People weren't into the dark, brooding hero like we are in now. We
Right.
look at that stuff. It's not like recognizable to us. The happy like clown, snippy one, corny pun,
Yeah.
007s and stuff. But that was what everybody wanted back then.
Yeah. Art is made, within the time frame that it's made in that
Mhm.
era, and it speaks to where we're at as a culture, a society, and all that. So yeah.
Did you get caught up in the like my big turning point in comic books was in 1992 when they had the X-Men come on Fox as a cartoon,
The
and
cartoon.
then I discovered Chris Claremont as a writer, and it was over.
The cartoon is a work. I remember watching that cartoon, and yeah, it's so great. I actually listened to it was maybe a year or two ago now. It was during the pandemic. Method Man had a podcast on a Marvel podcast, where he
Really, I'm gonna.
yeah, it ran through Pandora, I think, and he talked he talked to Chris Claremont, and they went through like what it was like to writing X-Men and what he was trying to do there, and it was great. That episode I know is still there, so if you get a chance, check it out. It's really great.
I'm gonna totally do it. We have a question from looks like producers have put it up, so it's probably Kyle. Your favorite Bond movie song? Impossible. I'll let you answer.
All right, so okay, my favorite Bond movie song is "License to Kill."
Oh,
License to Kill. Yeah.
yep.
Timothy
I
Dalton's
obsessively
song.
listen to that over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
License to
there's
Kill.
so many good ones.
Oh,
My favorite
yeah.
Bond song is whatever one I'm listening to.
Huh?
Whatever I'm listening to is the one that's my favorite at that moment. Few to a Kill is Jay's favorite. Everybody pitch in. What is your favorite Bond song? There's some really, really good ones out there. It's Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh, yeah. True. Diamonds Up. See, each time I hear that, I think of the Kanye West song now, though. Diamonds are forever. Yeah. Yeah.
Currently on repeat in my car is Skyfall. So
Okay. I respect that.
which I think is very nearly the most perfect Bond.
I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna have to do another listen. You're saying nearly perfect. Okay. I'm gonna have to give it another listen.
And here's the other thing I hear people say, that they don't like Quantum of Solace as a movie. And I'm like, okay, well, here's what you got to do. Because it wasn't apparent if you just watched them as individual movies when they came out. But if you watch them back to back from Casino Royale all the way through No Time to Die, they are one movie. They literally go from one movie to the next with flawless, like there's nothing in between. And the through line for all of it is Mr. White and or his daughter. It's crazy.
Yeah, my son is getting into James Bond now, so we're in the process of, and we started with Daniel Craig, so we're watching like it, going straight through. So
where did you start at, Dr. No?
No. We started with Craig.
Craig. You said Craig. So you're at Casino Royale.
So we started with Casino Royale.
Some light fare with no death.
Yeah, I mean, Casino Royale, like that's one of my favorite Bond movies. I really love like that movie was just so good. It was just so good. I really enjoyed it.
From that opening scene where he gets his 00 status, it's just you're like, I know all I need to know now about this character.
Yeah, it was great.
How old is your little one?
He's 10.
Perfect age.
Yeah, he's 10. 10, about to be 11. So he's branching into some horror stuff. He wants to watch horror movies. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Yeah. I'm ready.
I can remember when I thought I was ready for horror was probably about 2 years before I was actually ready for horror. So
I have a story like that too. I get it.
My first big horror film in the movie theater, because I watched a whole bunch of B flicks on VHS at my good friend's house growing up. But I begged him to go see John Carpenter's The Thing. Oh. And it so affected me like when I was watching it, it was completely cool. I was totally fine. I kidded about it on the way home, but when it was time to go to bed, that stuff got real.
Yeah.
I have not been able to watch it again.
Oh wow. Wow. That was a traumatic experience.
It was. And that's all it needs is just that double bass beat. Boom boom.
Wow.
I'm not like, nope, out of the room. See you later.
Well, at least you made it through the movie. Huh?
I don't want to see the dog's face split into 4. That's nope.
Nope. That's it. I'm going.
Which is bad because I'm a huge Kurt Russell fan and I want to see, I love he's got the most glorious hair in that film.
Just focus on the hair.
That's right.
Just focus on it. Look at the hair.
Kenneth Bird's in the house. He says, hello to everyone who's here tonight. And Kyle said his favorite James Bond song is Soul Bossa Nova from Austin Powers.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so let's get to comic book stuff as it pertains to you, Brian. When did you start writing? When did you feel the draw to write to the page?
Like, so are we talking writing comics, or are you talking about writing in general?
Yes, as a kid, did you like have a notebook of like stories you wrote and read to friends during lunchtime or?
Yeah, so I remember elementary school, we had the opportunity to make books, right? And back then, you had the glue and you actually did the binding. And I remember I wrote a story about a young girl who was on this adventure in Rome, and she was trying to find something in Rome. And I named the girl Millie because I named her after my mom, Mildred. And I remember the girl going on an adventure. And interesting enough, of course, you wrote the story. It was a picture book, so you wrote the story, but you also had you had to draw. So little did I know that was really like my segue into writing comics. I think it began there, but I didn't know it, right? Hindsight. So that goes back to maybe like 3rd grade, maybe 2nd grade, maybe between 2nd and 4th grade. And I feel like every year in elementary school, we were writing some type of book. And then, you get to middle school and you're doing like stories. And I remember my friend Derek Johnson, it was when Terminator was out. He would draw the best Terminator. and I would try to draw Terminator 2, and I wanted to put a story to it and all that. And it was just, I feel like each year there was some kind of writing being done. By the time I got to high school, it was, uh, writing papers, and I enjoyed. I want to tell myself I enjoy writing papers because it was telling a story, and I could like not even have to read the whole book, but I would have some idea about what the book's about, and I could just write it. So writing for me was just always there and was always fun, and that then went to college and playwriting classes and et cetera, and then I jumped into screenwriting. I went to I never forget it. This is actually a monumental thing. I was loving basketball. Had just come out, and I would sometimes just go to a movie by myself. Like it was my time to just be me. I would leave everyone back at our on-campus apartment, and I would just dip out. And so it was during the day. It was one Sunday. I just went to see Love and Basketball, and I wanted to go by myself. Did not ask anyone to go. And it was such a great movie. It was like a religious experience for me. It was such a great movie to me. And I'm like, you know what? What if I could write a screenplay? Because I've been like in my playwriting class going for it. I left after the movie. I went to it was a Borders then, and I bought a How to Write screenplay book, and I combed through that thing like in a few days, and I was all writing screenplays, and I've kind of been there ever since. And after that, I graduated, wrote some plays, and 2012 it was Walking Dead. I was watching The Walking Dead, and it flashed on there, based on a graphic novel. So I'm like, graphic novel, really? And it was like, wait a second. So I made a trip back. So that was my reintroduction into comics, because it had been like several years where I was, I wasn't reading comics. And I'm like, really? So I went to the comic book store, and I've been there ever since. And I got Walking Dead books. I started reading them. I'm like, oh my God. Like, because indie comics, when I was a kid, was not something that was to the forefront of like, you need to read this, or I didn't even know they existed, believe it or not. So I'm like, this is amazing. And so I'm like, I wonder if I could write a comic. And I ordered Dennis O'Neill's How to Write Comics, and there we go.
You started with a great inspiration. Denny's amazing.
That's the trajectory right there.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any teachers through all of your schooling? Did you have anybody that like truly like pushed you toward writing or inspired you to writing, encouraged you to write?
Yeah, I had a professor. Well, I had two professors. Okay, so I'll start in high school. Mrs. Stewart, my 10th grade teacher, she really pushed my writing in the sense of like, she loved my essays, but she would challenge me. And I really got into Shakespeare in her class. And from there, Bill Griffin was a professor I had a few times in college, and he was a Shakespeare professor. So I loved his class, and he gave me some great advice. He said, turn in an essay, and he was like, I love your writing. Like you have a lot to say. I know what you want to say, and you're saying it so beautifully. But here's my problem.
Uh-oh.
Get to the point. I was like, okay.
Were you saying you're in love with words?
Yes. And I'll never forget him saying that, and that changed how I wrote, to where I realized you have to get to the point. You can say you be flowery, and he described it as it's so flowery. But you have to get to the point too. Okay, Brian. I said, okay. And Laura Browder was my my playwriting teacher, professor, and then I took another class with her that was called Advanced Playwriting, and she challenged me, and she allowed me to also just explore and write. and we had some great round table discussions and all that. So really cool stuff.
I'm gonna shout out to teachers because I
Yeah.
know in my life, and it sounds like in Brian's life, they were integral in encouraging us to, keep learning and made it fun and challenging. So thank you, teachers that are out there that are doing it. We know it's hard. We know it's not easy. All right, you mentioned love of Shakespeare, which I am a Shakespeare nerd.
All right.
And so tell everybody what the key is to loving Shakespeare. Because I hear all the time people like, I don't understand anything that he writes. His language is so weird and I don't understand. What's the key to loving Shakespeare?
So for me, and I felt this really early on was, and it has really been a part of how I write. I believe, like I feel this is the same place where I try to write from. Shakespeare is all about the human condition, and the human condition is just transferable through time. Like we're always going to experience humanity in this life in the same way. Things will change, environment will change, all that changes with time, but the human condition remains the same. And how we felt then is how we will feel. It's just that it might not look the same. It's just like wearing clothes. We all wear clothes, but the style of the clothes change by time and by era and by culture, et cetera, et cetera. So with Shakespeare, I read it through the lens of the human condition, and by reading it through the lens of the human condition, when you get into that King James vernacular or what have you, it's easier to understand because you're not really, at least for me, you're not being caught up in the words per se, but you're really looking at the meaning and seeing what's the layers that's behind it. And I think it's amazing that you can write something so many years ago and it still have a place like right now. It still speaks to, and to a certain extent, it thoroughly speaks to the human condition. Like you can really feel, like you can almost imagine how Shakespeare felt writing it, like this, like he was really looking at the human condition in this sense. He was looking at himself, he was looking at the world he was in, and it's this beautiful examination of who we are. And yeah, it's dope. It's beautiful.
So well said.
Thank you.
For me, the hump to get over was a brilliant thing that one of my English teachers did, and it was to have in class to assign parts and have us read it out loud, and it became alive instead of just being like really difficult sentences to put together. When you had to say it out loud, or you could watch it in a play or watch someone's movie version of it, then it's like, oh, this makes way more sense.
Yeah. I remember in class, that happened in class. Bill Griffin did the same thing. Yeah. In a lecture hall. It's so cool. So yeah, I can co-sign that for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So you have gotten all your school finished. You're inspired to write plays and screen plays, and then you got interested in the comic book form. Looks like Walking Dead kind of got you pulled back in.
Yes. Rick Grimes did it.
What connection did you make with another human being that also wanted to create? Pulled you into like actually being able to do it?
So I feel like in the beginning, the writing process of it was kind of a lonely one. I think I didn't really know a whole lot of. We're talking 2012. I didn't really know a whole lot of, like, I didn't know any actually comic book writers. I really didn't come into contact any until like Facebook, which I then got on like years later. But my first connection was Morgan Sawyer, actually. I met Morgan Sawyer at King's Dominion one summer, and he was a cartoonist there. and I was writing scripts, I was writing comic scripts, and I was like, huh. And I used to read a lot of articles about like how to make it in the comic book industry, and the process and all that, and in collaborating with artists and so forth and so on. And so he did he did cartoons of my family and me, and I doubled back and I said, would you be interested in talking about doing a comic? And he was like, yeah, I would. And so that was kind of my first connection. Yeah. So, and, it was so many learning pains and growing pains there, learning curves, I should say, and growing pains in just starting that process, and learning how to collaborate. And so he was my first connection. Yeah.
So it sounds like your advice to other people might be just the ask is the first, like the first hurdle is just the ask.
It truly is. It's I think it was someone on Twitter the other day was like, what, I don't know how to meet artists, et cetera, et cetera. And like now there are way more platforms out there, and you really just have to reach out now, and and you'll be surprised, if, especially with Kickstarter, and you're trying to self-publish. And I think self-publishing is the obvious first route to go, and it's great to do that, and to be honest with you, to continue to do it. I don't think there's a place where you can, but for me, I don't think there's a place where you get where you're like, well, I don't have to self-publish anymore. I think self-publishing is it's all about how you want to tell your story. I'm jumping off onto the wrong tangent, but anyway, so I feel like, with these platforms like Kickstarter, and with so many people out there, you can collaborate with, maybe a page rate, maybe not, because you can partner up. You can do the legwork, and you can put your book on Kickstarter and split the money, or come up with a split. So there's so many different options now that allows for creators to actually create their stories. That wasn't the case in 2012, not for me. I think about 2 or 3 years later, I think Kickstarter really began to jump on the scene about 2 or 3 years later. So it's a creator's world now. It's a creator's world.
It just makes it wide open for people to be able to follow their dreams. Before, the barrier was not as much finding somebody to do a project with, but the money that involved to have a product made.
Yeah.
You had to, before fairly recently, you had to meet the minimums that any printer would do a comic book for, which was roughly like 3,000 copies.
Yeah.
Which, even very cheaply printed paper-wise comics, when you're talking about 3,000 copies, that's a lot of money in the 90s for someone that was just, rubbing nickels together.
Absolutely.
To make it happen. So this allows for everyone's nickels to rub together and essentially
very well put,
make something happen.
Yep.
JD's right. Now the best time to be indie.
I agree 100%.
So what was your first project that came to fruition?
First project that came to fruition was, and we're talking self-publishing too, right? Of course.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. I did this. It was a horror comic. It's called I Am Michael Watcher, with an artist named Charlie Alway. And that was probably in 2012 as well, like the later half of 2012.
Okay.
And we actually got the book. I actually have a copy of that book. I have a copy of it. I have all of them just stored from the beginning.
Secret stash.
Yep. So yeah, it was a horror story.
See if it's. I always think it's fun to go and look and see if, like, just anyone could go find.
It was I might have the only copy. I mean, I think Charlie Charlie may have one. I'm not sure. Like, because we no, there's some out there because we did do, man, did we do a Kickstarter for that? I think way back when Kickstarter was just, we might have tried a Kickstarter and maybe got like 15 backers, maybe something like that. I don't know.
The Bay has none copies of your awesome book, so I'm gonna have to find it another way.
Oh man, that's a tough one right there. I might have the only copy.
I had my mind was completely blown when I took a break from comic books to raise a family. So there was like this gap of from 1997 to 2000. It was big, to me, a fairly large gap.
Okay.
And when I came back, I just was like being silly on eBay and looked at my book that I did back in 95. And there was actual copies that people were trying to sell. And I was like, what in the world?
Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have to, what's the name of it? I'm gonna have to go look at it. What's the name of it?
I'll just send you something.
I want to see it on eBay though. Huh?
I literally have a garage full of them, so I can totally get them to you.
That's cool.
I'm happy to send them. Cool. You can see all my deficiencies as a writer, so the difference is that when you're doing now Kickstarter,
we froze
at bookstore. So I literally was telling people all the backstory, the transitions between parts of the storyline. I didn't have to put in those little blocks 6 months later, whatever.
Okay.
You can see the big deficiencies and not actually putting them on the page instead of just telling people those things. Okay. Doesn't work if you're not standing there.
I got you. That's a good story right there.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, do you look back at any of your work and say to yourself, I know more now, and I would have changed some of those things?
Definitely, 100%. Yeah, it was probably at the beginning of the summer. I was cleaning the office, and which involves me going through some of my stuff. I'm just like, I remember this, and I read a little bit of it. I'm like, oh. I wouldn't do that now. I wouldn't say it like that now. So yeah.
Can you think of any examples of just not a specific words or anything, but the literary mistake that was made?
Well, as far as dialogue, there's a way to write dialogue. I kind of call it it sounds like block dialogue, where it's very choppy and blocky, and it doesn't flow. And in the time, you're writing it, you think it, because it's in your head and it's going on the page, it sounds right. But I look back and I'm like, ooh, that was really, really choppy. That was not, I could have said that way better, or I could have added a hyphen or something. There's certain things that you can do with commas and hyphens, ellipses that gives the right flow. There's certain words that are bold, certain that are italicized, that gives the right inflection or the cadence that you want. And when you look back at your older stuff and you realize that some of that stuff is absent from the writing, you're like, oh, I didn't know that there. And now you do. And even with panel descriptions, my understanding of the turn page and stuff like that is way better, and the pacing of the page based off of the paneling and the number of panels. And so, yeah, early on, it's like, what? Now it's like, yeah. So
it's truly a collaboration, because when a lot of that stuff can get caught by editors and help fix those things, or even your artist will say this is an awkward transition in dialogue that splits between, we have to turn the page to find out what they say next, and it's just a really weird spot.
Yep.
So they can help out too, which is so cool.
That's very true. Mad Cave helped me to grow a lot, coming on as their editor. I guess that's 2016 maybe. In me looking at scripts, reading scripts, and me looking at the art and keying in on certain things. being an editor really, influenced and helped my writing. So
I could
for
totally
sure.
see that. That would definitely, it makes you have a different eye for your own work
Hmm.
even.
Yeah.
So which books did you get to edit at Medcave?
Man, I I edited a lot of them, especially early on. Battle Cats, when they were starting off. Man, I have them over here. Battle Cats, Midnight Task Force. I did a little bit with that. There was another editor on that on on the back end. I jumped in on that. Woven Heart,
Mm-hmm.
um, Over the Ropes, which is more recent. Hellfighter Quinn. Um, of course, well, I'm still on Nottingham. Um, Man, if I need to Google because there there was really a lot of them. Let me see. Wait a second. I have most of them here.
I used to know every single name, but they've moved on to new titles now for some
Yeah.
of them. I
And
don't get to see
so
them often.
yeah, shows in. So like there are, because they've expanded. There's several different editors now, and I'm not on everything, but I do sometimes get to proofread some of the things I'm not on. But I will say that I've been definitely fortunate to work on probably well over 10 titles.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a great ride, and they're great people, and love everything that they're doing and how they're growing, and for them allowing me to grow with them. So it's been great.
I love those guys so much.
Yeah,
I love that they've figured out how to do what I call the slow roll, which doesn't overwhelm either a reader nor a comic book store trying to find a place for them on the rack. They've done the right amount of titles to be able to, for everyone to be able to fit, and each of them have like their time in the limelight, which is perfect.
absolutely. I agree 100%.
So, was your first work with regular publishing companies, was it Dragonfly?
So Dragonfly, I guess yes. So they're with that book is done through Unparalleled Comics, and right now they publish through Kickstarter as well as through uh, their website. My first, I would say, if um, independent through Kickstarter, like being hired on to write a story, was with Evolution Publishing with Marcel Dupree. He brought me on to write Angelica Reigns. So
Nice.
two I wrote 2 issues for Angelica Reigns, and then after that, I linked up with Jay Sloan and them. Maybe a year or so later with Jay Sloan and them, and he brought me on to do Dragonfly and to write Stella Odyssey. So, and that's been quite the ride. Issue four and five of Stella Odyssey is going to hit Kickstarter soon, and that's a complete arc. And issue four of Dragonfly is going to hit Kickstarter soon, and that's a complete arc. So it's great to have been able to write 2 full arcs for that company. I mean, it's been incredible.
Did you know when you started the books that you were going to get to have access to be able to finish an entire storyline, or did you have to do it issue by issue?
So the hope was too. So the way that we went into it, I mapped out. I gave an idea based off of what they wanted done with the concept. I hope to develop like an idea for um, the overall story for the arc, um, with everything that they wanted to see happen. So the story was there for both of them. And as time progressed, of course, because um, with independent publishing and through Kickstarter, that month by month release or even by monthly is not exactly going to happen. So that time to do one arc is stretched out to maybe 2 years. So as that time progressed, we had a chance to go back in and look at the story and make small tweaks. but the story was like the full story was always there from the beginning. So
That's good. I'm happy that you got to see it through.
yeah. It's not, that doesn't always happen, with independent comics, or nor with, traditional publishing. Sometimes you might start something, and it might not ever actually make it out to the story even now. So um, to have a smaller publisher to put out a full book, and they're about to put out, two full books. It's a great accomplishment for them, and I'm happy to be a part of that for sure.
But I also love that you've done other work with other companies I really respect and love, including, what was it, just 2 weeks ago? Vineyard #1 dropped.
Yes, yes, the Vineyard with Aftershock. I love everyone at Aftershock. They're great people too. They're amazing to work
So
with.
this is one of those rare instances in which I did not get to read the first one, and it's really because I have an amazing co-anchor for our Minute to Skim It show, in which we pre-read books and do reviews on them.
Okay.
But the problem is that they also have decided that they love independent books, so we're getting close to like thumb war to be able to get to read books. So in this case, I did not get to read it, but I did get to listen to the review that was given, and they loved the Dionysian. Were you inspired by? Was this your Shakespeare?
But well, I mean, I feel like it's definitely some Shakespearean tragedy mixed in there for sure. For sure, yeah. The mythological and Dionysian horrors, yeah.
Yes.
That's
And
my spirit for it.
that one's slated for four run.
Yeah, so it's 4 issues. Issue 2 comes out September 7th.
Okay, so there's not much time to wait for you guys. This is a heads up for everybody. Definitely go get that #1 issue before it disappears, because I seem to remember that that's already sold out at distribution, but it could be me getting it mixed up with other books that are definitely selling out of Aftershock. It's kind of like a new thing for them. Like every single release is gone.
Yeah, they're hitting it, reading dangerously, and is their tagline, and it's true. Like they have a lot of great challenging titles, that pushes the envelope, as well explores different areas of storytelling. It's a phenomenal thing. So I was a fan before joining them. So it's exciting to now be a part of what they're doing. So it's cool.
Absolutely. Now, okay. Only for lack of time, I'd love to go way deeper into Vineyard, but preserve my favorite for last. Sorry. Talking about really pushing the envelope for what a story can tell and make people think really deeply about. Black Cotton certainly really said, I'm going to make you think outside the box for just about everything. Was this something that you had been mulling around and got together with Patrick, or did you guys think of this together? How did this come to fruition?
So the Black Cotton story is a cool one. It begins 2 months before the pandemic starts. Okay. A mutual friend, when I was in the school system, I was teaching. I was teaching in DC. We have a mutual friend named Luke Wright, and Luke said to me, "I have another friend who he collects comic books, and he wants to meet you. Like he has this idea for a comic." I said, "Yeah, okay." So sometime in January 2020, we finally meet for lunch. And we're sitting there, we're eating, we're not even talking about comics, we're just hanging out. And so he said, "Okay, I have to talk to you about this." I said, "All right." And so he said, "I have this idea for a comic. And it's about everything being reversed. Like the world is is opposite. Like white is black, black is white, and even the cotton, like going back, even the cotton's black. I said, stop right there, black cotton. That's the title. He was like, yeah, that is the title. And so Patrick and I, from that point on, and that is really, that's just out of conversation with. At that point on, we shut down lunch and we started building out what Black Cotton was going to be and how we were going to tell this reverse story. We ended up leaving lunch and going back to his house, and we stayed there till like 11 or 12 o'clock at night. My wife was mad, and I was like, well, we got to finish this. Like, we, what vehicle we're going to use to tell this this alternate reality, this reverse story. And that's how it came to be. We really mapped it out all in one day. From the point where he said even the cotton's black, it was on from there. And that's how Black Cotton came to be. And from January and then March 13th, of course, 2020 pandemic. But by the time May came, we was already into art. We had already linked up with Marco, and art was already being done. So we worked completely through the pandemic. As a matter of fact, we only got to meet one time in person before the pandemic, and then we didn't meet again in person until Free Comic Book Day of this year was our first time meeting back in person. Yeah, but so we did Zooms and we talked on the phone a bunch of times. So it was like we had been meeting in person, but we had to do we actually had to step back because we're at my LCS, right? Gateway Comics and Toys in Fredericksburg, and we're doing the Free Comic Book Day signing, and we're like, this is our first time linking up since 2020 in person. So man. Yeah.
And I would say that was very odd or unique, but there are a lot of people that work together and collaborate that aren't even in the same country.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the room where I believe that this creative team is like best friends and hangs out on weekends together and has barbecues or whatever. But when they're at New York Comic Con and sitting next to each other at a table, it is truly the first time they've been in the same room, and they're 10 issues into something.
And that's amazing. It's just, it's crazy how vast and big the world is, but then how small it can also become just through communication like this. We are so connected to people that we may not physically come in contact with, and to some extent we're sometimes more connected to people that we're not physically in contact with, and I think that's one of the miraculous things about communication that exists right now in this world, is that you no longer have to be there in order for you to develop a relationship with someone, and I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So did I see that you guys are working out volume 2?
Volume 2, yes. Volume 2, Black Cotton. Volume 2 is called Black Cotton, White on White Crime and the Plight of Gentrification. That's the title of Volume 2. We are going to do, our planning here is because we're expanding what we call the BCU, the Black Cotton universe. To where we have 2 spin-off titles that we're going to do. Where we want to do some type of a social media announcement this week. Our graphic designer guy is working on those, which will explore the titles of those 2. But Volume 2 is kind of like the jumpstart into the second story with our main characters, but it's a larger story. And so from the larger stories, we're going to be able to branch out with 2 spinoffs. And what we want to do is kind of like what Scott Snyder did. We want to, with each issue 1 of those, we're going to do a Kickstarter introduction. So issue 1 of Black Cotton, White on White Crime and the Plight of Gentrification, it will begin on Kickstarter, and then the rest will run. Then 1 through 4 because it's going to be a 4-issue. Book 1 is going to be 4 issues. Book 2 is going to be another 4 issues, and book 3. So volume 2 is really a 12-issue story, but we're going to segment it into 3 books of 4.
And those are going to be, those parts will be through Scout again?
Yes. So all issue 1s will just begin on Kickstarter, but then we'll transition to Scout. And same with the spinoffs, where the spinoffs will have issue 1 on Kickstarter. We have some cool like metal covers we're going to do and stuff like that. And then they'll go over to Scout.
And then, so is the content for the books that are going to be Kickstarter, will those be unique content not included in the books that'll come through Scout?
So they'll be unique to the cover and unique to the content. And we're going to change up the cover, and the content, the back matter, etc., will also change.
Okay, so there'll be a truly unique item. That's really cool.
Yep.
Well, I'm excited.
Thank you. Yeah, we're looking to do that Kickstarter in September. September 27th is the day. September the 27th is going to be for Black Cotton, Volume 2, Issue 1, the special Kickstarter edition.
We'll probably have you back so we can talk more fully about what that looks like. Get everybody all hyped about it.
Sounds
Where
great.
should everyone follow you on social media so that they can keep up with all of the information leading into that?
At Brian L. Hawkins on Twitter, and the rest of the spots, IG, Facebook, all that stuff is Brian Hawkins Writes, BrianHawkinsWrites.com, BrianHawkinsWrites.substack. There's a theme there. So Brian Hawkins Writes. That's me.
All right, perfect. Well, everybody, make sure you give a thumb up, some hearts, some ringing that bell to subscribe so you don't ever miss any of our talks with Brian ever. And support your local comic shops and the creators that make the awesome things that go into them. Thank you so much, Brian. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having me. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, thank you and shout out to Sam Cavella, Jason Wordy, Taylor Esposito. They are the magic behind the Vineyard. And, it's been great collaborating with them. Same thing for Marco and Francisco and Marcello Santana, and Patrick. It's comic books is about collaboration, and it's taught me so much, from like the industry and work standpoint, but even more importantly, it's taught me about like that human bond in life. And that's what collaboration in this comic book industry has taught me. It's helped me to better understand how important it is to work with people and to develop relationships with people. So like this one right here. Yeah.
What a perfect takeaway. I love that. All right, everybody. I got to clear the board because it's time for other cool stuff on the experience.
There we go.
We'll get together again and talk more about all this awesome stuff. Thanks so much, Brian.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.